in this video, we're going to learn about the inverse, the converse, and the contrapositive. So you might be thinking, well, what on earth is that? This is some lingo for the unit that you're in, which is math logic. And it's something that you've probably never done before, which is totally all right. It's pretty new. A lot of it's wordy, and so we use a lot of abbreviations, and it kind of looks like a foreign language. So I'm going to break it down for you as best I can, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding once you're done listening to this. So we base pretty much everything off of what's called the conditional. Now, a conditional is a statement. It's a mathematical statement, and it doesn't have to be math. It can be just like a sentence, but it has to have an if and a then. So it's an if-then statement. And note that it doesn't have to be necessarily true. It can be something that is false, but we'll talk about that in another video. So a conditional statement is made up of two parts. It's made of the first part that comes after the if, is called the hypothesis, and the part that comes after the then is called the conclusion. And typically, they say the hypothesis is a P. They use an abbreviation of P for hypothesis. Why they don't pick H, I don't really know. P and then Q represents the conclusion, and this arrow means then, okay? So what we're going to first practice is taking in a conditional statement and making abbreviations out of it so that we don't have to spend all of our time writing, because these can take a long time to write out, but not necessarily a long time to do all the problems that go with it. But the writing is a lot, so that's why we abbreviate. So remember that the arrow means then, and we don't even necessarily write the if, okay? All right, so I wanted to write this out and give you an example of just here's an example of a conditional statement. If it is snowing, then it is winter. Like I said, doesn't have to be true. So what we want to do is here is going to be our part. It is snowing is going to be the part that's the hypothesis, and the conclusion is it is winter. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to take like the main word in the sentence that would describe it the best and use that capital letter as your abbreviation. So in it is snowing, I would choose S, okay, for snowing. And then under it is winter, I would choose W. Now, note that I talked to you about this arrow, so you can write it this way. If it is snowing, and then you write an arrow instead of doing comma then. So if it is snowing, then it is winter. That's more of an abbreviation, but we want to even abbreviate it more. So like we chose this S for snowing and this W for winter, I'm going to write it here and say if S, which we know represents it is snowing, then, which is the arrow, W, which we know represents it is winter. Or the way that you're most often going to see it is S, then W. You're not even going to write the if. So we took this whole sentence and we condensed it down to this here. Okay. Now, I want to just practice writing some abbreviations before we move on to the next three vocabulary words, what they mean and how to figure them out. So, conditional abbreviation practice. So, if it is raining, comma, I'm playing inside, and these should have, I forgot a then there, sorry about that. If it is raining, then I'm playing inside. So I'm going to look here, it is raining. I'm going to say, well, raining is my main word here, and playing inside, I would probably choose I for inside. You could choose P for playing though if you wanted to. So I would write this R, then I. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to introduce to you is something that's called a negation. I'm going to put this over here to the side. Okay, a negation, I want you to think of as a negative. So a negation is the opposite of the sentence of your hypothesis or your conclusion. So if we take, for example, we'll take this, I'm playing inside, or I am playing inside. The opposite of I am playing inside is I am not playing inside. So if I was using I for playing inside, to negate it, I would write not playing inside. This means I'm not playing inside. Okay, I call this the really fancy name of squiggly I. Okay, so if you have a squiggly in front, that represents not. I want you to think of a squiggly, of a negation, just like you would a negative sign, just like you would positive or negative numbers. A negation, think about it as negative, okay? So when I'm writing conditional abbreviations, if I have here, it is not sunny, okay? My main idea here is sunny, but since it's not sunny, I would write this as squiggly S because it's not sunny. Then it is cloudy, C for cloudy. So when you're writing out abbreviations, if it's negated, if it's a negative sentence, if it has a not in there, always write the negation in your conditional. All right, the last one I kind of put in here because it doesn't have an if or a then, and these might get thrown at you. So all runners are athletes. So to convert this into an if-then statement, this really says, if you are a runner, whoops, I'm gonna run out of space, then you are an athlete. Okay, so athlete. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Athlete. Okay, so how would you abbreviate this? If you are a runner, then you are an athlete. Okay, so what we're going to do now, let me get a different. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our conditional statements that we've abbreviated with letters, and we're going to manipulate the statements by negating either the hypothesis or the conclusion, so the parts of it, like squiggly S or squiggly R, okay? And then we're going to change the order, and by changing the order and negating it, we get different logical statements, okay? So we're going to remember that our first and foremost, most basic logical statement is the conditional, and it's always if P, then Q, okay? So the first one that comes up is called the inverse. So the inverse says I'm going to take both my hypothesis and my conclusion and I'm going to negate them. So I have squiggly P, then squiggly Q. I'm making them both negative. The converse is the next one. The converse says I'm actually taking my Q and my P and I'm switching their spots. I'm flipping them. So it becomes Q, then P. Okay, so I took them and I literally switched them. And the contrapositive is a combination of the inverse and the converse. So I'm going to flip and negate. All right, so, and I wrote here for you what to do, like here, negate both, flip, and then flip and negate. All right, okay. So I'm going to give you one example, and hopefully this will help you understand how to write a conditional, how to abbreviate it, and then how to manipulate it to find the inverse, the converse, and the contrapositive. And remember, it's easiest to do with the abbreviations. Okay, so my conditional is, remember, these do not have to be true. If I like peas, then I don't like carrots. So first thing you want to do is you want to abbreviate it. So if I like peas, I'm going with P. Then I don't like, okay, that's a negation, so squiggly, C for carrots. So my conditional says P, then squiggly C. All right, so I'm going to find the inverse, the converse, and the contrapositive of P, then squiggly C. My inverse says I negate both. Okay, so to negate both, I would get squiggly P, then C. Because remember, I want you to think of a negation as a negative sign. If you negate here, I'm going to come right up here. If I have, we negated this, squiggly C. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, so you can think of negation as the same way. If you have a negation of a negation, then it just cancels each other out. Okay, the converse says you flip them. So if I'm flipping, remember, I always use my conditional as my baseline, okay? As my base for where I'm doing my problem. So I'm going to flip my conditional. So I flip my conditional, so I have squiggly C, then P. So what does that even say? This says, if I don't like carrots, then I like peas. Okay? Much easier to write out the abbreviations than to write out the whole sentence. All right, last one, contrapositive. I have to negate and flip. Okay, so I'm going to negate both and flip them. So the easiest way to do it is like when I negate both, so that would be my inverse, and then I take my inverse and I flip it. So this gives me C, then not P. Okay, so what does that say? That says, if I like carrots, then I don't like peas. So the thing that I want you to remember is always base your inverse, your converse, and your contrapositive off your conditional. Inverse means negate both. Converse means flip the order. And contrapositive means do both things. So flip it and negate it. If you have any questions, let me know. Good luck.